The HOA thought they could bully me by shutting down my garage, so I bought the land next door and built a legal business that now towers over their clubhouse. In this video, you're going to hear the full story of how I took on a power-hungry HOA board, exposed their double standards, and turned their petty rules into my greatest opportunity. From legal battles and zoning loopholes to a viral grand opening that turned the whole neighborhood against them, I'm breaking it all down, chapter by chapter. Thank you so much for your support and your comments. I seriously appreciate every single one. If you want to help this channel grow, just leave a like and hit that subscribe button. It takes less than a second and helps us take down HOA Karens one story at a time. Now, let's get back to the important and necessary information. How one simple workshop shutdown turned into a neighborhood-wide rebellion. Jack wiped the sweat from his brow, greasy knuckles glistening in the fading sunlight. The engine he'd been rebuilding for weeks, a '69 Mustang Fastback, was almost ready to rumble again. He could already hear it in his head. But that dream was interrupted by a knock. Not the friendly kind. Jack looked up. Two sharply dressed women stood at the end of his driveway, one holding a clipboard like a loaded weapon. The taller one stepped forward, wearing a pin with the unmistakable letters, HOA. "Mr. Lawson," she began, "your garage operations are in direct violation of our neighborhood's covenants." Jack stood, still wiping his hands with an oily rag. "Garage operations? You mean working on my own car? You're running a workshop, sir. Residents have complained. You're creating a nuisance." Jack's eyes narrowed. "You mean noise? It's a muscle car. It growls." "This is a quiet neighborhood," she replied coldly. "You'll need to cease immediately or face fines." That was the moment Jack knew this wasn't just a warning. It was a challenge. He didn't know then that this was just the beginning. Jack stared down the two HOA representatives like he had stared down 100 rusted bolts in his time, firm, unbending, and quietly calculating. "Cease what exactly?" he asked, stepping forward. The taller woman flinched, just a hair. She wasn't used to being questioned. "I'm fixing my car. In my garage. On my property." According to Article 7, Section 4 of the HOA Guidelines, the clipboard woman interjected, flipping pages like a smug paralegal. Residents are not permitted to engage in commercial repair operations or activity resembling automotive business or manufacture on residential property. Jack laughed once, short and humorless. "There's no business here. No signs. No customers. Just me, a toolbox, and a damn Mustang." The shorter woman, clearly the follower, mumbled, "We've had multiple complaints. Oil stains. Late-night noise. Your garage lights are visible past 10 p.m. Jack crossed his arms. "You do realize garages are meant for working on cars, right?" The tall woman bristled. "This is a community, Mr. Lawson. We maintain standards here. If you won't voluntarily shut it down, we'll be issuing a formal citation. If unresolved, it could lead to daily fines and eventually a lien against your property." That was the moment the real war began. Jack didn't yell. He didn't threaten. He simply nodded and said, "Go ahead. Do what you have to do." That night, he sat in the garage with cold beer, staring at the wall, not in defeat but in thought. The HOA had just drawn first blood. What they didn't know was that Jack wasn't just a grease monkey. He'd built 2 tech companies in the early 2000s, sold them off, and bought the house cash. His garage was his peace, not a profit center. He looked at the lot next door, a weed-choked plot of land that had been empty for years, owned by a retired couple who'd moved out of state. And that's when it clicked. If they wanted to play by the book, he'd buy the whole damn bookstore. By the next morning, Jack's peaceful garage had turned into a battlefield of passive-aggressive warfare. When he stepped outside to grab the paper, he saw it, a bright yellow violation, notice pinned to his mailbox. Notice of noncompliance. You are hereby cited for operating a prohibited garage workshop in violation of HOA Regulation 7.4. Failure to comply will result in a $250 daily fine. Jack smirked, crumpled the notice, and went back inside. He wasn't surprised. What surprised him more was the speed of their attack. The HOA wasn't wasting time. They were swinging for control. That same afternoon, Jack received a letter via certified mail. Inside, a 5-page document full of legal jargon, HOA citations, and veiled threats. Continued noncompliance may result in legal action, forced property liens, or civil penalties. What they didn't realize is Jack read these types of contracts for fun. Years in business had taught him one thing. Paper bullies count on fear. He never played scared. By day 3, the HOA had reported him to the city. A random code enforcement officer showed up for a routine check. Jack showed him around. No commercial signage. No customer traffics. No part sales. No advertisements. The officer scratched his head. Honestly, this looks like a private garage. It's a loud one, yeah, but it's not breaking any municipal codes. Jack smiled and handed him a bottle of water. Appreciate the visit. The officer left, but the HOA didn't. Later that week, Jack caught a woman from the board taking photos of his garage from across the street. He walked out calmly. Need a better angle? I can open the bay door for you. She stormed off. It was later that night, walking his dog around the neighborhood, when he passed the adjacent lot. It was overgrown, fenced off with a rusty lock, and rumored to be unbuildable due to zoning confusion. Jack pulled out his phone and typed in the address. A few minutes of digging and bingo! The owners had listed it privately 5 months ago. No bites. He made a call the next morning. Hi, my name's Jack Lawson. I live right next to your empty lot. I'm interested in buying it. Fast cash, no conditions. By the end of the week, Jack owned the land. Jack didn't rush. He hired an architect quietly, brought in a zoning consultant, met with city officials. He wasn't going to just build a garage. He was going to build a legally compliant, noise-permitted, small commercial auto restoration business, right next to the HOA's clubhouse. The sound of gravel crunching beneath steel-toed boots echoed across the quiet neighborhood as a crew of surveyors walked onto the vacant lot next to Jack's house. Clipboards in hand, neon vests on, they began staking out the boundaries of the newly purchased land. It didn't take long before the neighborhood noticed. By mid-morning, 3 different HOA members had stopped their morning dog walks to linger across the street, mouths half open, brows furrowed. Jack didn't wave. He just watched from his porch, coffee in hand. They would be wondering. That was the point. Jack had spent days digging into zoning laws. With a little help from an old friend who worked in city planning, he discovered that the lot, while technically residential, was zoned in a special mixed-use overlay that allowed light commercial use with conditional permit. And better yet, the HOA had no jurisdiction over it. The land wasn't part of their association. It sat just outside the neighborhood's jurisdiction, grandfathered in by a decades-old map that the HOA clearly never bothered to look at. It was quite literally free real estate, and it was legally his to use. So Jack got to work. 2 weeks later, a backhoe rolled onto the lot. A portable fence went up. Jack filed for permits under the name Lawson Performance and Restoration, LLC. He wasn't just making a statement. He was starting an actual business. And to ensure it was all by the book, he paid extra for every inspection, every engineering stamp, every environmental review. Every tiny detail was locked in place. This was going to be HOA-proof. Of course, the HOA didn't take this lying down. One day, while Jack was overseeing the concrete foundation being poured, a black SUV pulled up. Out stepped Marla Ridgewood, the HOA board president, mid-50s, perfectly ironed slacks, and an expression that looked like it hadn't smiled since 1993. Mr. Lawson, she said, her voice clipped and sharp. What exactly are you building here? Jack didn't look up from the blueprint he was holding. A garage. For a business. Restoration work. Legal. Permitted. Zoned. Would you like a copy of my filings? Marla's jaw tightened. This is a quiet residential community. Jack finally looked up. And this, he pointed at the gravel lot, is not your community. She took a step forward, lowering her voice. You're doing this out of spite. Jack smiled. I'm doing this out of principle. You wanted my garage gone? Fine. Now I have 2. She huffed, spun on her heel, and marched back to her SUV, almost tripping over the curb in her frustration. What Marla didn't count on. The neighbors weren't all on her side. In fact, some of them kind of liked Jack's idea. A few stopped by to ask if he'd be offering inspections. One guy, Pete from down the street, used to be a mechanic himself, and offered to lend a hand once it opened. I used to love working with my hands. Man, you bring that back here? I'm in. Jack nodded. We'll build something better than they can imagine. The morning air buzzed with metallic thermal construction, but Jack wasn't on site just yet. He sat at his kitchen table, staring at his laptop screen. He wasn't just building a garage. He was building a movement. The HOA wanted him silent, shut down, invisible. But Jack had other plans. Today, he was going public. Jack opened his browser and clicked upload. The thumbnail was simple. A photo of his garage being boarded up by the HOA contrasted with a shot of his new construction site. Mid-build. Title: Prohibited HOA shut down my workshop. So I bought the lot next door and built a legal business right in their face. Description: When the HOA tried to bully me into silence, I didn't fight back with words. I fought back with permits. Watch how I flip their rules upside down, and what I'm building right next to their clubhouse. The video was raw, heartfelt, and direct. He explained what happened, showed receipts, zoning laws, HOA letters, even the moment Marla Ridgewood tried to intimidate him. Then he ended with a promise. If they wanted to silence me, they chose the wrong guy. This is just the beginning. He clicked publish. Within 24 hours, it hit 180,000 views. Reddit picked it up. Then TikTok. The comments flooded in. HOAs are the worst. Respect, man. This is how you play smart revenge. Subscribe just to see how this ends. Jack smiled, but Jack wasn't stopping with a viral video. He had hired a local high school design student to help him with the branding. A fresh logo, matching work shirts, yard signs that read, "Coming soon, Lawson Performance and Restoration," built on principle. Then he reached out to local car groups, veterans clubs, and hobbyist forums. He offered discounted first-time services and open garage days for classic car lovers. The neighborhood, once hesitant, was shifting. Even Mrs. Garvey, who used to glare at him from her rose garden, stopped by with cookies and asked if he could maybe help fix up her late husband's old Chevy. Jack said yes. He always said yes. Behind the scenes, Jack had filed a Freedom of Information Act request for all internal HOA correspondence related to his citations. He wanted to see what they were saying behind closed doors, and it didn't disappoint. He found emails discussing personal surveillance, notes about finding zoning loopholes to trap him, and one board member even admitted in writing, "This guy thinks he's clever. We'll make an example out of him." Jack printed that one out, framed it, and hung it on the inside wall of his new office. It only made him dig in harder. As the structure started to take shape, metal beams rising, siding going up, the HOA tried their next tactic, a neighborhood-wide petition to halt the operation of Jack Lawson's commercial development. It was full of legal jargon, exaggerated claims, and doomsday predictions. Property values will plummet. Increased noise and traffic will destroy the family atmosphere. This is no place for an industrial site. But when Jack reviewed the petition, he saw the most beautiful detail of all. Only 14 signatures. And 7 of them were board members. The neighborhood had spoken, and they were with him. Jack wasn't surprised when the HOA filed a formal zoning appeal. He expected it. After all, what do people do when they realize they can't control you directly? They go after the systems, the city, the permits, the bureaucracy. And the HOA, with their manicured meetings and color-coded folders, had plenty of time and petty energy. But Jack had 2 advantages they didn't. 1, he knew the law. 2, he had money. Jack called in a favor. A friend of his from college, Lena Cho, now a sharp-as-hell real estate attorney who specialized in land disputes, agreed to represent him pro bono. She loved sticking it to bureaucratic bullies. When the city sent notice of the appeal hearing, Lena was ready. She walked into the zoning board chamber with a stack of binders that made the HOA's legal team blink twice. "Mr. Lawson's build is in full compliance," she began, voice calm but firm. Zoning Ordinance 8.6.2 specifically permits light commercial activity on mixed-use lots within grandfathered districts. The HOA has no jurisdiction here. Their entire appeal is based on subjective neighborhood preference, not law. Then she dropped the kicker. And if the board sees fit to interfere with lawful small business, Mr. Lawson is prepared to pursue damages and request attorney's fees under Section 1983. That quieted the room. The zoning board didn't even need to deliberate. They denied the HOA's appeal on the spot. Marla Ridgewood, seated in the back in a beige blazer and a permanent scowl, looked like she'd bitten into a lemon dipped in Tabasco. The moment the meeting ended, she beelined for Jack in the hallway. "This isn't over," she hissed. Jack just shrugged. "It actually is, but thanks for trying." With the appeal crushed and permits locked in, construction shifted into high gear. The building went up faster than anyone expected. Locals dropped by daily, some out of curiosity, others offering to help. Jack paid 2 teenagers from a neighborhood to paint the interior, the same 2 kids Marla once scolded for skateboarding on the sidewalk. He made it a point to involve the community in every step, not because he had to, but because he could. Jack didn't just want to run a shop. He wanted it to be a symbol. He hosted a community-first open house before the official grand opening. Free barbecue, tool giveaways, live demo repairs. Families came. Neighbors came. Even a few ex-HOA members showed up. Try not to look impressed. He gave a small speech on the mic that day. "They tried to shut me down because I was too loud. But you can't silence people who stand up for themselves. This garage isn't just for fixing engines. It's for fixing what's broken in neighborhoods like ours." Applause erupted. The HOA, now fully powerless to stop him. The morning of the grand opening, the air felt electric. Jack arrived early, hours before the ribbon-cutting ceremony, just as the sun crept up over the ridge. The building, once a symbol of spiteful resistance, now stood fully finished, sleek in steel gray siding and black trim. The Lawson Performance and Restoration sign gleamed under the soft light, mounted right across from the HOA's community office. He took a deep breath, looked around the freshly painted parking lot, and smiled. Today wasn't just about cars. It was about reclaiming space and dignity. The festivities kicked off at 10 a.m. sharp. Food trucks lined the curb. A local radio station set up a booth, speakers blasting upbeat rock music. Kids ran around with free balloons shaped like spark plugs, and adults browsed refurbished classic cars parked out front, all bearing Jack's logo. Jack had even arranged a raffle for a free oil change and diagnostic service, which drew in a solid crowd. His team wore matching black work shirts with "Power by Principles" stitched across the back. People were talking, laughing, celebrating. But not everyone was happy. At precisely 11:30 a.m., just as Jack stepped onto a makeshift stage for a speech, the unmistakable black Lexus of Marla Ridgewood crept around the corner. Behind it came a city inspector's truck. Jack's eyes narrowed. He stepped down from the stage. The inspector approached first, holding a clipboard and looking uncomfortable. "Hey, we got a complaint. Noise levels, unpermitted signage, traffic concerns." Jack raised an eyebrow. "During a permitted, city-approved grand opening? I have to check it out. It's protocol," the inspector replied sheepishly. And then came Marla, practically beaming with smug satisfaction. "This is a peaceful residential neighborhood, Mr. Lawson," she said, loud enough for nearby guests to hear. "Your circus is disrupting the community." Before Jack could reply, someone else stepped in. "Lena Cho." "Hi," she said crisply. "Attorney for Lawson Performance. Just so you know, I've already filed a formal complaint against your HOA for repeated harassment, and I've emailed the city proof of all permits, including event clearance." Marla's smile faltered. "And if you think for a second that this petty stunt is going to intimidate my client, you're in for a long, expensive surprise." The inspector nodded, clearly not wanting any part of it. "Everything looks fine. Enjoy the event." Marla didn't say another word. She just stood there, surrounded by music, laughter, and community. Alone. Later that afternoon, Jack finally gave his speech. A local journalist filmed it and posted it on social media. It went viral within a day. This garage wasn't built just to fix cars. It was built to fix a culture that punishes people for using their talents, that silences a little guy, that thinks it can hide behind bureaucracy and bully people into compliance. We deserve neighborhoods where people support each other, not where HOA boards wield power like playground bullies. This is our community, and this is just the beginning. The crowd erupted. Some neighbors even chanted his name. Later that week, the city posted a public statement reaffirming that Jack's business was 100% compliant. The fallout from the failed sabotage attempt came swiftly. 2 HOA board members resigned after internal emails surfaced, showing they tried to bribe the inspector to find something wrong. A petition to dissolve the HOA board began circulating the neighborhood. Residents started pushing back against other outdated, arbitrary rules. One even painted their mailbox neon green in solidarity. Jack had become more than a guy with a garage. He was a symbol of standing up. In just a few short months, Lawson Performance and Restoration went from a neighborhood controversy to a community cornerstone. The garage bays never sat empty. Locals came in not just for repairs, but for advice, referrals, and conversation. Jack's decision to offer discounted services to veterans and seniors had earned him even more goodwill and more loyal customers. But the more his business thrived, the more the HOA unraveled. It wasn't just oil changes anymore. Jack added workshops on basic car maintenance, partnered with nearby trade school to offer student internships, and even launched a monthly Open Hood Sunday, an informal car show that turned into a minor tourist attraction. Every event brought more visibility, more support, more proof that the HOA had completely misjudged Jack and misused their power. As neighbors saw how much better things were getting without HOA interference, cracks formed in the board's foundation. At the next monthly HOA meeting, only 6 residents showed up. It had been 28 just a few months ago. Marla Ridgewood opened the meeting with her usual tight smile, but even she couldn't ignore the empty chairs. A longtime resident raised his hand. "I'm not renewing my dues this year," he said plainly. "You all spent more time trying to crush Jack than you did helping the neighborhood. And look at him now." Others nodded. By month's end, 15 homeowners had submitted formal withdrawal notices. Then came the moment that changed everything. One afternoon, as Jack was swapping an alternator in a classic '72 Mustang, Lena Cho arrived at the shop, folder in hand. She looked genuinely delighted. "You're going to love this," she said. Turns out someone sent an anonymous tip to the state's Housing Oversight Commission. Jack wiped his hands on a rag. "About?" She opened the folder. The HOA's finances. Improper use of funds, undocumented fees. Unexplained invoices go to a consulting firm tied to one of the board members. Jack blinked. "Wait, they're getting audited?" Lena nodded. State auditors just opened an investigation. If even half of this is true, the board's going to have bigger problems than you. The news hit the neighborhood like a thunderclap. Emails flew. Phone calls followed. Emergency board meetings were held. Jack stayed quiet, publicly at least, but behind the scenes he connected with several neighbors who had kept HOA letters, fines, and memos. Lena was now organizing them into a collective grievance. By week's end, the HOA was under formal audit. Residents reported seeing board members removing boxes from the HOA office late at night. One anonymous message posted online read, "They spent years bullying people with rules. Now they're trying to cover their tracks." Jack didn't gloat. He didn't have to. He just kept fixing cars. Every customer he helped, every youth internship he supported, every free brake pad inspection he offered. It was another reminder of what community looked like when it wasn't ruled by fear. A local news station even picked up the story. Mechanic fights back against HOA, builds business, and sparks reform. The anchor called Jack a folk hero. He laughed when he saw it. But in truth, that wasn't too far off. Jack didn't have to swing a hammer this time. The community had picked it up for him. As word of the state audit spread, neighbors who had once feared retaliation began speaking out. Some came forward with stories of fines issued for imaginary offenses. Others dug up old HOA financial reports, full of suspicious payments and expenses labeled consulting, legal review, and the especially cryptic neighborhood image maintenance. Marla Ridgewood had ruled like a petty monarch for too long. Now, she was facing her kingdom, and it was revolting. Lena, ever the strategist, compiled a packet of evidence into a public report she called Broken Trust, How One HOA Lost Its Way. It included a timeline of the HOA's vendetta against Jack, screenshots of emails leaked by a former board member who quit disgusted, financial statements showing over $28,000 in unexplained expenditures over 3 years. Jack printed 200 copies. They were placed in mailboxes overnight. By dawn, the neighborhood had read it. That week, the HOA called an emergency town hall. Normally, a meeting might draw 5 to 10 people. This time, over 100 chairs filled the room. Jack stood quietly in the back, arms folded. Lena sat beside him. A small local news crew hovered near the exit. Marla Ridgewood took the podium, her tone condescending but visibly shaken. There have been allegations, she said. Baseless, slanderous allegations that seek to undermine the important work we do. She didn't get to finish. A resident stood up. You tried to evict Jack for having a wrench in his driveway. Now you're hiding $30,000 in expenses. Where did the money go, Marla? The room erupted. More hands shot up. Accusations poured out. Years of pent-up frustration and fear. One woman near the front said plainly, "We're not afraid of you anymore." By that point, a formal petition for board removal had gained more than enough signatures. According to HOA bylaws, a special vote could be held to dissolve the current leadership and appoint a temporary transition committee. It happened that night. The votes were counted on paper slips. It wasn't even close. Marla and 2 other board members were removed by a 79% majority. They walked out of the community center without a word. Jack didn't cheer. He didn't need to. Instead, he turned to Lena and whispered, "Let's build something better now." The newly appointed Community Leadership Committee held its first open forum just a week later. This time, people came with ideas, not complaints. A community tool library, local job fairs in the garage's backlot, after-school workshops for teens interested in trades. Jack offered to host them all. If we want to replace HOA control with something meaningful, it has to start with neighbors helping neighbors, he said. This garage is yours as much as it is mine. The shift in energy was palpable. Jack's story made its way to a national talk show. He was interviewed via Zoom, and the clip went viral again. They tried to silence me for having a dream in a garage, Jack said. Now we've turned that garage into a place where others can find theirs. The host grinned. That's one way to tune up a neighborhood. Jack had never thought of himself as a hero, a mechanic. Sure, a stubborn one, a man with grease under his fingernails and an eye for engines, but not a symbol, and certainly not someone little kids would look up to. That changed on a quiet Tuesday afternoon. It was just after lunch when a young boy wandered into the shop with his mom. He was about 10, wearing oversized glasses and clutching a dog-eared sketchbook. The mother looked nervous. "Hi, is this Jack Lawson's place?" "That's me," Jack said, wiping his hands on a rag. "How can I help?" She gently nudged the boy forward. "My son, Malik, watches every video interview you've done. He wanted to show you something." Malik flipped open a sketchbook. Inside were drawings of cars, classic muscle builds, futuristic electric concepts, even a rough design for a hybrid truck that ran on solar. Some pages had labeled diagrams with handwritten notes. Others showed Jack himself, wrench in hand, standing next to the garage. At the bottom of one page were the words, "When I grow up, I want to fix things like Jack." Jack didn't know what to say. His throat tightened. That night, Jack talked to Lena. "I want to set something up for kids like Malik," he said. "A real apprenticeship, something that lasts." By the end of the month, they launched the Legacy Wrenches program, a paid, part-time mentorship program for teens and young adults interested in trades, engineering, or mechanical work. Within 2 weeks, they had over 40 applications. Jack picked 6. Malik was the first name on the list. The garage transformed again. One corner was set up with a learning bay. Clear engine diagrams on the walls. Workbenches labeled with every tool. An old car mounted half open for kids to study. Jack's team, once just mechanics, became mentors. They taught safety, tool care, diagnostic methods, and even the ethics of community business. Jack insisted on that last one. "You're not just fixing machines here," he told the kids. "You're fixing what people thought wasn't possible. You're building trust." One Saturday, a parent posted a picture of their daughter, oil on her hands, standing proudly by a rebuilt alternator. The post went viral. Local outlets picked it up. Mechanic turned mentor rebuilds more than engines. Soon, trade schools, nonprofits, and even a city councilwoman contacted Jack about partnerships. But Jack stayed grounded. "I didn't do this to go viral," he said in a short interview. "I did it because someone tried to take something from me, and I realized I could build something better instead." One morning, Jack passed the HOA office on the way to work. It was empty. The board member's sign had been taken down. The windows were dark. A for lease sign hung crookedly on the glass. He stopped and looked for a moment, not with anger, not even with satisfaction, just quiet peace. That afternoon, Malik ran up to Jack, holding a wrench. "Mr. Jack, can I try it myself this time?" Jack smiled, handed him a pair of gloves, and nodded. "Go ahead. You've got this." It was a foggy morning, just after sunrise, when Jack's shop phone rang. He was elbow deep under the hood of a '65 Chevy Impala when Lena picked up the call. She paused, looked over, then mouthed silently, "It's the mayor." Mayor Clarissa Finch wasn't a politician in the traditional sense. A former educator with a deep love for civic change, she followed Jack's story from the moment it hit local news. "Mr. Lawson," she said warmly, "your garage has done more to unify your neighborhood than most outreach programs we've funded in years." Then came the offer. "We'd like to partner with you. Expand your mentorship program citywide. Create satellite workshops in other neighborhoods. We'll provide the space, funding, and resources if you'll lead it." Jack was stunned, speechless. Lena had to nudge him. "Say something before she thinks you fainted." He finally replied, "I'm honored. Let's do it right." Within 3 months, the Legacy Wrenches initiative launched its second location in a low-income neighborhood across town, then a third attached to a high school tech campus. Local tradespeople signed up in droves to mentor. Old garages were repurposed into educational hubs. Young people, especially those often overlooked, finally had somewhere to go, something to build, and someone who believed in them. Jack's Garage had become the blueprint for a community-powered education. As the program grew, Jack was asked to speak on panels, at schools, even at conferences for urban revitalization. His message was always simple. Start with what you have. Don't wait for permission. Fix what's broken, even if they tell you not to. He didn't wear suits. He didn't memorize speeches. He showed up in work boots and told his story. The one about a man with a band garage, a stubborn will, and a community worth fighting for. Eventually, the vacant HOA office was demolished. In its place, Jack helped fund the construction of a community garden and public space, co-designed by local kids from the Legacy Wrenches program. They planted wildflowers, tomatoes, mint peppers, and hope. A small plaque read, "From Opposition Opportunity," built by the hands they once tried to silence. Years later, on the anniversary of the garage's opening, Jack sat on a bench beside the lot. His hair was grayer. His hands still bore grease. Malik, now 18, ran one of the new satellite garages. "Remember when they said your shop was a nuisance?" Lena asked, smiling. Jack chuckled. "Funny what happens when you don't give in." A car pulled up across the street. It was an older man with a flat tire. Jack stood up. Slowly. "Well," he said, "I guess some things never change." The HOA that once sought to crush one man's dream no longer existed, but the legacy of his resistance spread across the city. One wrench, one student, one garage at a time.